So I was listening to New York City, USA's, not city, but New York State's governor, I believe it's Andrew Cuomo, talking on Stephen Colbert's show. And he was saying that Trump could be winning decisively in the polls and win re-election quite easily. He could have. Clearly, he isn't right now. He is down in the polls compared to Biden by a significant margin. And a lot of us would say that, well, this was the case with Hillary Clinton in the last election. Of course, the difference is that most of us, the world, in the way that we really act to women, we kind of hate women, right? And for one thing, Hillary Clinton was never a vice president, is one thing. And whatever success that is associated with Barack Obama, it rubs off on Biden. He was present, even if he wasn't given decisions. And Hillary lost, like previously, to Barack, a no-name candidate. She was the wife of a former president, and she lost to this guy who had never run before. He was a senator for how long? I don't know, very short period of time. And yeah, I think that people overestimate how much people don't like women, for one thing. And anyway, that's a whole other thing. But I was thinking about it. I was like, you're right. In Korea, I have a friend who's Korean, and he was telling me that it looked like the guy who was in power when COVID hit, before COVID, it looked like he was going to lose by a clear margin. And then he won. And then there is this lady in New Zealand, very recently. She won because New Zealand handled the pandemic very well. And there were a couple other people, if you look at elections around the world, who handled their, I think maybe Taiwan had an election, and the leader there, she won. So it seems to be that people who handle COVID well, they win, in spite of, what looked like it was going to be poor polling prior to the pandemic occurring. So what Mr. Cuomo was suggesting was that, like Trump, he and the mayor of New York City, I believe Bloomberg, it might have been their fault as to why New York City was hit so bad, because they didn't take it seriously at first. But once it became clear that the house was burning down, they took decisive action to fix everything and to gain everybody's trust. And now New York has a quarantine against for anybody who's coming in from almost every other state in the US. They have a quarantine, or they require those people to quarantine themselves for 2 weeks, because that's the source of New York's problems, people coming from other states. So they learned what they were supposed to do in the situation, and from then till now they're maintaining everything that they learned, and they're pretty much respected, at least by many of the people in New York, maybe not outside of New York. I know Joe Rogan and some of his guests who are right-leaning, they tend to say, oh, look at all the crime that's happening in New York now. Those guys, they're not doing a good job at all. But I would say, if you look around, most of these states, I was looking at the positivity rates for some of these states. By positivity rates, it means that when you test people, the amount of people that you test, what percentage of them come back as being positive, and you use that as an indicator to see if what number or percentage, number of people out there might have this disease that you haven't caught. If it's a really small percentage of the people that you test actually are infected, then you could suggest that, or you might tend to assume that, okay, we have gotten the people who are sick that we have identified as being positive. That's probably really close to the number of people who are actually infected. It's not, 10 times, 20 times as many people who are infected by this thing as the people that we have tested positive, all right? And I'm seeing, like in South Dakota or North Dakota, with some of these places, there's like 37% positivity rate. There's 20-something percent positivity rate, which is astoundingly horrible. I think the WHO is saying that anything above 5% telling you that you need to do more. And by the way, with respect to California and Texas, California and Texas have a similar number of people who are infected per 100,000 that they've set and know to be positive. California has, to me, a significantly lower number of people per 100,000. So I'd say they're doing a little bit better. But in terms of positivity rates, Texas has a 9% positivity rate, clearly above 5, not good. And California has like a 2.9% positivity rate, which is 3 times better, one could say. But yeah, New York is doing really well. I should have looked up New York's positivity rate, but they're doing well. They learned exactly what they needed to do. And all of these other states that are going wild with their infections, they clearly haven't learned by looking at New York. And maybe they didn't even learn from their own problematic experiences after New York. Some of them are going back up, I think, in spite of the fact that they tried a particular path, maybe Florida, maybe some of these other places. They loosened restrictions, things are bad, and they don't seem to appreciate. I don't know how many deaths they need, but most of New York, except most of the US, aside from New York, maybe New Jersey, I didn't really look, they're doing a lot better. I mean, most of the US, is increasing. I mean, I think the US is posting records for the number of people. Anyway, to get back to Trump, I don't think that he had it in him. I think it's possible, according to what Cuomo was saying, it's possible that if he had taken the coronavirus as seriously as building his wall, that he might have been able to have a good showing, like Korea, like Vietnam, like New Zealand. Maybe if he had coordinated with all of the governors, maybe. But as we can see, or it's somewhat indicated by what's happening with his businesses, this is not somebody who seems to really be successful. He just keeps shooting from the hip, and it worked. It worked to win his election, However he felt, he just said this, said that, didn't do what his people told him to do, and he won. And I think part of why he won is because he was going up against Hillary Clinton, who lost to a senator that we hadn't even heard of before the election. I didn't know who the heck Barack Obama was. So, we look at him and we might say, well, hey, look, he won anyway. He scraped by. Yes, he decisively scraped by. But he scraped by, and by decisively, what I mean is there were some places that there were polls that were taking long to come in, and they were hoping that there would be a lot of Hillary voters in those, not polls, those votes that came in afterwards, later. And no, they didn't. It was the same percentage of people voting for Trump amongst those people who hadn't, whose votes had not been counted. So even as they came in at the same rate. So it was a through and through victory for him, one could say. But it was a through and through small victory in the places where he needed it. I don't think he has enough. I mean, just listen to his conversations. You just listen to his conversations where he jumps from topic to topic, sometimes even contradicting himself several times. That would be the reason why his businesses are not doing well. And if his businesses are not doing well, like, the New York Times article is saying that except for The Apprentice, he probably would be in a lot of trouble. And now, after he leaves office, he's probably going to be in a lot of trouble. And he has had bankruptcies before, and I know other people were like, okay, well, other people have had bankruptcies as well. And I think that based on that, I've read articles like that said, well, other people have had bankruptcies as well. So, I mean, it's not a big deal. And based on the number of bankruptcies that we see, it's not really that bad. And maybe that's the case. Actually, no, it's not the case, because that's the whole point of the New York Times article, that all the glitz and glamour that we see is a front. That, what is it? I saw someone say, one of the producers of The Apprentice, or some of the producers of The Apprentice, they said that when they came in to, I guess, to make over the place for his, to run The Apprentice, to show, everything was kind of falling apart. It was an empire, a business empire past its prime. So I think Donald Trump knows how to do that front. And yeah, it could be put at the feet of his father that that's what his father fostered. His elder brother was not able to give his father what he wanted in terms of this amount of bravado and this I'm the best kind of attitude. But Trump, I guess, learned the lesson from his brother, that this is what my dad wants and this is what I'm going to give him. And unfortunately, it was instilled in him from stem to stern that that's what you need to do in life. I don't know that they were saying, maybe it was in his book, that when he was going around promoting himself as this fantastic real estate developer, and he was pretending to be other people in order to do that promotion, and many people reported that it was Trump's voice, it was him that they spoke to, and he was pretending to be somebody like a representative of his or somebody else. And I think that was how he even got some of his deals done. He went down to the construction site and he got some, some tractors, some bulldozers, whatever. And the investors who came to see, having seen that, they gave him the money that he needed. And anybody who has tracked Trump would see that he puts up the front, he gets what he needs. You can see all of the disreputable companies that he's been involved in, like Trump University or Trump Steaks, or maybe even some of these people who he sued with respect to his golf course. Even the fact how he takes charity money to purchase a portrait of himself. This is not somebody who has it all together. And I think that Cuomo is really being pretty generous. And I don't think that Trump ever had it in him to handle this okay, to learn from this mistake and to, just do better. I don't think it was in him. Also, he seems to have this idea that let's do the opposite of what Obama would have done. And I think Obama would have handled it. He knows how Obama might have handled it. And I think that has a small part to play as well.